What is going on YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you the finals of the last week's J&J's locals. This can be between myself on the left playing Gabumon, and on the right we're going to have my opponent playing Agumon. Now, just like a couple of videos ago, I am going to be testing out the editing to put the cards on the screen to potentially help out some of the newer players. So if you could leave a comment, let me know if you enjoy this or not, or if it was helpful to you so I can actually start to gauge whether this is worth editing or not into the future videos. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into the match. Now, starting off, I did win the die roll, so I will be going first. So I'm going to go ahead and start off hatching the Agumon, and then I actually just end up passing my turn, no rookies in hand. I have multiple champions as well as option cards, and that's not the start you want to see, especially versus Agumon, as they are going to be able to come in very aggressive. But I am able to top deck the Gabumon, and then able to go into the mat, putting my opponent at 2. But now I have access to the mat, being able to gain the memory in the future, as well as access the Bond of Friendship. But my opponent's going to go ahead and swing for 2 checks with the Deltamon thanks to the Lightning Joust at a pretty high DP rate. I think the only thing that was going to be able to get rid of it was the Bond of Friendship or something like a Kakaitis Breath, but now I'm not in the best spot because this Deltamon is going to be rather annoying. It is pretty big, and I don't have an Octomon to be able to trade into it, but I can swing over the Agumon, and then like I said, I have multiple options in hand, so I'm going to go ahead and Spark up and then play the Rattlestar, putting my opponent to 3, but bouncing back the Deltamon, because like I said, it is going to be quite the issue. If I leave it on the board, it's going to be able to come in for a lot of checks. Obviously, they're going to be able to replay it back in raising right away, but I do get to slow it down for at least a turn or two, and then my opponent's going to throw out the Atomic Blaster, getting rid of my Kakumon, but it does put me at 4 memory, which gives me a decent amount to build on top of, and now I can get my own 7k DP vanilla on the board with the Octomon. Now my opponent's going to swing into the Howling, so I get the Howling out for free, but they do get to search with the Agumon Inheritable, and although I have my own 7k DP Digimon out right now, it might be a little bit too late just because I only have 1 check. I haven't taken any checks from my opponent. I did see they had an Atomic Blaster right there, which they could have played to take out my Octomon, but opted to just play the Marcus so that way they don't get choked anymore, and they have the ability to gain some memory when they attack with the Greymon going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and boost up into 6. That's going to allow me to go into the Octomon to draw, and then I can play the Howling, putting my opponent at 1, and now I can swing in with the and draw with the Upamon. Now I get double swings in with the 2 Octomon, kind of neutralizing the Atomic Blaster that I was talking about because they can only get rid of 1 instead of getting rid of both, and I shut down the Deltamon from attacking for 1 turn. Another great thing about the Octomon going into the Atomic Blaster is I can play it with the Gabumon, and now they can't get rid of the Octomon and the Gabumon. They'll have to choose one or the other to get rid of, but I'm still looking in a pretty rough spot. If my opponent does get rid of this Gabumon, then I will be in trouble because I don't have the ability to get rid of all the checks on the board. I have 3 swings to my opponent's 3 security. I don't have any extra tamers to put hybrids on top of or have any ways to get extra security attacks, so there's a pretty high chance that my security is going to have to bail me out of this. I can go ahead and play down the double Ice Wall going in here, making it so my opponent has to pay 4 memory to attack next turn, which I will end up going for, but the thing is with Marcus and Ty, my opponent's going to go to 4 no matter what, so unless in my security is the Hammer Spark or another Ice Wall, then my opponent's just going to have the memory to be able to swing twice, and I already used the Rattlestar, so the only thing outside of Ice Wall and Hammer Spark that could save me here is the one of Kakaitis, so they're going to swing in, pay the 4 memory, see what they hit, and they hit the Gabumon, and they can just swing in with the Agumon and take game 1. So of course I'm going to be going second as always, so that way I can get that board development. I did have a little bit rough of a game there, turn 1 just having to pass, and also the Deltamon was putting in a lot of pressure, but opening my hand, I do have the Ikakumon and the Kendo Garurumon in hand, which is always really good in this matchup. Being able to have that aggressive pressure, so when my opponent starts going wide with rookies, I have ways to answer with either the Kakumon being able to swing over or the Kendo being able to bounce, but my opponent's going to be able to swing in with the Deltamon. Actually doesn't have the boost because of the Digimon, which means that the Octomon is going to trade into it, and they're going to go ahead and end off their turn playing the Marcus, once again making it so they can't get choked, but I'm able to gain 1, draw 1 with the mat, be able to go up to 4 memory, Digivolve into the Ikaku, and then I do use the Hammer Spark so I can go up to 3, which allows me to play the Draw Gabu, and then just put out another Ikakumon on board, once again making it very hard for them to clear off the board with something like Atomic Blaster, but also just making it so that if they do want to go into the Burning Greymon to be able to swing over, I'm going to at least have the Ikakumon on the field, but unfortunately the combination of Burning Greymon and Atomic Blaster is going to take out both of my Digimon right there, which isn't the worst thing to happen in the world, but it is going to set me back a little bit because like I said, the Kakumons are relatively strong in this matchup because of the rookie presence that Agumon brings, and so by losing those, I am a little bit behind as far as being able to take care of what's on board. I do still have the Kendo in hand to be able to have as board control, but it's not as good as the Ikaku because they do bounce back, which means they can be played again. But speaking of the Kendo, I am going to have to Digivolve into it here so that way I can get a little bit of cycle going and start to swing in, get another check. My opponent hits the Marcus, which is unfortunate because they did have to get rid of their Marcus, and now they are going to have another one, which means I can't choke them. And whenever you swing into your opponent's security and they get the Tamer out, then you kind of have to play around it, because I was planning on putting my opponent at 1 there, but now I can just go ahead and use the Rattlestar to bounce one of the Burning Greymons back, so that at least that way if they want to attack, they can only get over my Kendo and not get some checks going, and I do have to keep them slowing down. At first they weren't Digivolving and raising for a bit, so I thought they were whiffing the Rookie, which is going to be a very good sign, but they ended up having the Agumon. They do have to pay 1 to Digivolve, but it doesn't really matter too much. I think just having something in raising is more important than whatever you have to pay or put in there, just because if you don't have the Rookie, you're going to fall pretty far behind, especially when all you have on the board is the Burning Greymon. But now they have the Deltamon in the back, the Agumon on the board, and once again, that's always going to be very annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and play off an Ice Wall, so that way they can't get too much aggression this next turn, and then play out another Davis, so that way I have more Tamers on the board, and that way I'm also going to be able to search for the cards that I may potentially need. I do have the Gabumon in the back to be able to go into Bond next turn and clear all the checks and security, as long as I don't hit something like a Gaia Force. And then I have multiple Tamers as well as the Howling to be able to go into a hybrid to go for game. And I do believe we see the Lobomon right there, and I think I have 2 Lobomon, so I have a pretty good chance of being able to go into multiple hybrids next turn. And I also have multiple Ice Walls in hand, so the one that I played isn't going to be the only one that will likely come out this game, because they are getting pretty wide, they are getting pretty aggressive, and I do want to slow that down. So we'll see what our opponent wants to go for here. They end up just hard playing the Agumon instead of Digivolving on top or anything like that, just because they want to expend the memory. I'm going to go to 3 anyway, but it is pretty rough. They have hard played a couple champions this game. They hard played the Burning Greymon earlier, now they're hard playing the Agumon, so showing that they have a little bit of a clunky hand when it comes to champions, which I'm going to have to try to take advantage of. I am going to go into Bond of Friendship right here, just because I have to take the risk of being able to swing and go for game. Now I could go for game right here, but I do decide to swing over the Digimon and bottom deck another one. That makes it so that way if I do hit Gaia Force top check, I won't lose, and then I'll be able to swing in with the final checks. The Geo Greymon comes out, but it's not that big of a deal because I'm going to go into Lobomon. I'm going to be able to bounce up back to 2 and play the other Lobomon and go in for game right there and tie the series up 1-1. Now my opponent is going to have me start off game 3, of course, and so I'm going to start off with the BT6 Gabu into the mat, so at least I have the mat on board. I didn't want to give my opponent 3 memory really, because that gives them a lot of options this first turn to be able to play multiple cards, but I did have to get that mat out as soon as possible so that way I can get that going and potentially threaten to go with Bond again. Now looking at my hand, I do have a few heavy option cards like the Kaitis Breath that I could prefer not having, but I'm going to have to just deal with it. I do at least have a couple Ice Walls and the Bond in hand to be able to threaten later. Going to play the Draw Gabu out so that way I can get that cycle going. My opponent's going to go into Burning Greymon. They can swing over the Gabu if they wish, or they can go into Security, but no matter what, they're going to be able to get the EX1 Agumon effect to go off and search. They only can hit those 2 Agumons there, so going to grab a starter deck Agumon to hand, potentially getting that boost later, but they're just going to hard play it and see how that goes for them. I'm going to Digivolve and go into the Octomon, so that way I can swing over the Burning Greymon 7k to 6k, because they only get the boost when attacking, and then I'm going to go ahead and play down an EX1 Gabu, so that way I can just have another Digimon on board to potentially Digivolve a champion on top of next turn, as well as just being an extra check. Like I said earlier, the Atomic Blaster isn't as scary when you have Octomon on the board, because they can't Atomic Blaster both my Gabumon and my Octomon like they would be able to if I Digivolved into something like Kendo or Ikakumon instead. So now if they want to go ahead and go with the Atomic Blaster, they can only get rid of 1 Digimon on the board, and that makes it relatively safe to just to play these rookies out. But we're going to see what my opponent wants to do. They are thinking about what options they have. They do go for a little bit of cycle by Digivolving and the raising, and then they go with the Agumon, using the Lightning Joust to gain the 2k, and instead of going in for security checks, they are just going to trade 7k into my Octomon 7k. Just needing to get rid of the Octomon because it likely would have went in for multiple more checks. Now I'm thinking about what I want to go for here. I end up going into the Bond, and then I am going to Hammer Spark up to 2 and Digivolve up into the Ikakumon. Now this is really hard for me because I have to try to play around both Gaia Force and Atomic Blaster, so I decide to just go ahead and alternate my attacks, and hopefully I hit them in the correct order. So I'm going to go ahead and swing, hit the Atomic Blaster. So if I did go all 3 swings with the Bond first, then I would have went ahead and got hit with that Atomic Blaster. The Ikakumon wouldn't have been able to go in, but then I can go in for the last swing, double spark up to 2, and go in for Lobomon for the game. So with that being said, that is this match. This matchup is very interesting because every time I play it, it just seems like 2 decks beating each other up, going back and forth, having very dynamic, strong different plays, going for very aggressive plays, as we saw things like the Lightning Joust coming out, both boards going very wide, and me having to respond with my defensive cards like Agumon and Ice Wall, but was able to barely squeak it out with that match. But if you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe, because I'm going to be bringing you even more content. And if you want more Digimon content, be sure to consider following me on Twitch. The link will be in the descriptions, because I will be doing Digimon live streams over there, going into BT7 here soon. But with that being said, I hope you have a great day. Peace out.